Family. It's 8 o'clock. Y'all know what that means, right? It's time to talk. Big shout out to Incision. I know you saw it. That program will change the way that you look at education for sterile processing, even the OR. They actually have modules that fit both genres. So definitely give them a look. Incision.care. Look at them today for your educational needs. Also, big shout out to RST Automation, innovation at its finest, bringing us the AIM system, the Peel Pack system, and even the storage system where AI actually incorporates into the program to help you become more efficient in your everyday use in sterile processing. Today, I'm excited about today for two reasons. Hey, Clarence, how you doing, sir? Glad you could be here with us. Thank you for being here with us. And we're going to get you some good education tonight. Today's a special one. I got quality as it pertains to patient safety and employee safety. Today, we're just going to be diving into and uncovering some of those critical processes that helps keep healthcare safe, effective, and reliable. Y'all know me. It's your favorite uncle, cousin, nephew, Kenneth Campbell. But yeah, today we're going to be diving into what does that mean? What is quality as it pertains to employee safety and in patient safety? How do you tie those two things together? I know that behind every successful surgery or medical procedure is a team of dedicated professionals that ensure that instruments are not only clean, but truly sterile and safe to use. But what does it take to maintain such high standards day in and day out? That's what we're here to uncover, right? Sterile processing isn't just about cleaning tools. It's about protecting lives. It's a complex, high-stakes process that demands precision, attention to detail, and a strong commitment to quality control. In this episode, we're going to explore why sterile processing is critical to patient safety, the challenges that sterile processing teams face, and the innovative practices that are shaping the future of our field. We'll also touch on how quality assurance programs measure up, staff training, and compliance with some of the industry standards, and how they all come together to create a safer environment for both patients and healthcare professionals. So whether you're a sterile processing professional, a healthcare administrator, or simply curious about what happens behind the scenes in the fight against infection, this is going to be where you get all of that at today. So without further ado, I had to reach out and grab somebody who I felt like would bring a different take on what that means, education-wise, training-wise, and how do we tie that to the OR piece? So I reached out to my own director of clinical education, Miss Carol Malone, and I tried to get her to say, Kenneth, I don't know what that means, but she didn't. She stepped right up to the plate, and she's going to come in and give you the same thing that she gives us all the time. So without further ado, I want to welcome Miss Carol Malone to Time to Talk. Carol, how are you?
I'm well, thank you.
Hey, for everybody who doesn't have the pleasure of working with you every day, introduce yourself to the people and let them know what you bring into the table today.
All right. In a nutshell, I had been in the industry. I was a manager department. I've worked through that. And then for the last 6-ish years or so, I was the educator over 17 locations, approximately 200 techs. So I've done a lot of different things, seen a lot of different things, and try and maintain my own education so I can be a good support and tool for our group of people.
Okay. Rebecca's here. Hey, Rebecca. So without that, I appreciate everything that you've done and everything that you're going, into the field. and what you're doing now to further educate us on different things. But I have to ask you my favorite question that I've been doing this season. What does quality actually mean to you when people say, we're looking for quality in a department, or I want that tray to have quality? What does quality mean to you?
Quality to me, it isn't what you say, it's what you do. So what I mean by that is, for example, when I'm doing a competency and I want the technician to look up the IFU, my question is, do you know where? My next question is, okay, 10 heads. So that's wrong to go to one source. But if you don't know how to get there and you don't know how to use it, there's no quality there. There's no substance. So that's kind of what I mean by that.
Okay. So in saying that, is there a way to train to quality? Do we train techs to have quality, or what are we actually looking for? Because as I was saying right before we came on air, I've never seen quality on a competency sheet. So is there a metric that we can go to say, I'm training you today because I want quality out of your work?
I really think there is. We do have the cover from our last conversations. I feel, regardless of what shift you're on, regardless of where you work, regardless of what specific group of people you support, everyone in that department should be able to test every machine, should be able to read every test, should be able to run every machine, should be able to work in decontam, prep and pack, sterilization. That we shouldn't be pigeonholed into, I only run the sterilizer, I don't ever work in decontam. Well, there's no quality if you can't do everything. You can't be efficient, you can't produce a good quality product from start to finish if you can't do all the pieces. So yes, I think we need proper processes in place to train these technicians to, and then we as leaders need to audit them, not just once a year at a competency, but periodically, randomly throughout the. I should come up to you, hey Ken, let me check that tray when you're done assembling it, before you wrap it and stick it in the sterilizer. Just quality check it.
So in saying that, so like I know there's a bunch of facilities where they do like the testing on the night shift, and so the day shift and the evening shift don't get a chance to do that testing. So what you're saying, proposed under the way you would do it, every shift would know how to do the testing if the need arises that it had to be done on a different shift.
Well, think about it this way. If you have a sterilizer that breaks down, it's not going to get fixed on third shift. It's going to get fixed on first shift. So who's going to run the Bowies and potentially the BIs after that repair is done?
Okay, second or third shift. I see. I can agree with that. Even down to the washer test, though. So, even down to the washer test, a lot of shifts are off shifts doing these testing. And I get to your point of, if we did have a major repair that happened, it's not going to happen at midnight. So if that machine does come back up and you have to do those testing, who's going to be responsible for that? So that is one of those where I say, again, are we training to those type standards where everybody does know how to do these things? That's one of those common things where you hear every year, is there universal training? Is there universal education? How do we get to people to that point?
Yeah, I mean, again, in my last hospital system, we did. I was able to get senior leaderships buy-in on that process, and we did competency everyone on everything, and they had to know how to do it. And if they didn't, they failed, and they had to be retrained until they could pass the competency. And it was a daunting task, I will tell you that, because some of your I don't want to say seasoned, tenured technicians who
Okay.
always got away with not doing these things. Just we're some of the
Right.
toughest nuts to crack because I've been here 30 years. I don't run tests. I don't know how, and I don't want to know how. Well,
I mean,
you know,
that is one of those pushbacks that you get because they've never had to do it before.
right.
And it's probably one of those skills that you're going to learn it and then you may not use it because, again, the testing and stuff is done on those off shifts, but just having the know-how of how to do it does kind of intimidate people sometimes because it's something they haven't done.
And I would get the pushback from the preceptor as well with, well, the test was already done. And my response would be, is it going to hurt you to run another test? Is
And
there
that was
some
going to be my
reason you
next
can't
question.
run another test?
And that was going to be the next question. When we're doing this quality testing or getting
Mhm.
people to that same point, are we actually running a test or are we talking about running a test? Are we saying, walk me through the steps? Or are you actually physically running a test to get people the practice they need to see actually how to do it? Because they need to see what it's supposed to look like when it comes out, what that cycle is. They need to be able to do these things. And that's where I say, are we actually training to a quality?
Again, I actually did, but I do know that I do run into resistance in some places. They don't want to waste the materials or the tests. Same
Right.
thing with biologicals. And again, my response is I'd rather waste a biological, and it's not wasting it, by the way. I would rather use
Right.
a biological versus giving a patient, an HAI, health-acquired infection, where that's going to cost the hospital way more than this test that this person was so concerned about using out of turn. So we have to pick and choose. I was very much a fan of every load monitoring, testing the washers and sonics multiple times, multiple shifts, because in your larger facilities, where you're doing 60, 70, 80 cases a day, that machine
Yes.
is getting
Right. I just want to throw in there like Rebecca is saying quality is a mindset. Like you
that's
have to
very
have a
true.
certain kind of mindset to focus on the quality part. Do you agree?
I do agree. And I've seen a lot of Rebecca's posts, and she's spot on with a lot of stuff. Let me just say that, Rebecca, you're spot on.
Since you brought it up, and you talked about like HAIs and what we could cause from a sterile processing perspective, how can even lack of a proper quality control in sterile processing directly impact patient safety and lead to adverse outcomes? You're saying what you would do as to get the training to a certain standard for everybody, but what does lack of a proper quality, controlled process, how does that adversely affect patient outcomes?
I mean, so my first thought on that question is, lack of a quality control for, or we would be catching missing or broken instruments. But if we're not performing those quality checks, that is making its way to the room. And we all know that sometimes bioburden is not discovered till the middle of the case,
Right.
or they don't realize they're missing a crucial instrument until the patient is under anesthesia. So, those things are going to cause harm, or potentially could cause harm to a patient. Extended anesthesia times, not having the proper instrument, and the surgeon may make do with something else. Or, I mean, I don't know exactly what they do in those instances, honestly. But it's something we could easily prevent if we would just do a few audits.
Okay. Um, so when we're talking about a quality assurance, I just want to break it down for people. So when we're talking about a quality assurance program or having some kind of quality assurance, quality control, what would that process look like for you?
So there's a couple different things I used to use, actually. So we had in our tracking system, we had what we called non-equipment tasks. And these
Okay.
things would pop up every day. So a non-equipment task, obviously is your Bowie Dick, your biologicals, your washer tests and things. But a non-equipment task would be auditing first shift assembled trays. And it would pop up as a task. And as a manager, you could assign it to someone or you could respond to it yourself. And we had forms where we would audit the trays and we would audit the trays, fill out the forms, and we would scan it with the flatbed scanner to that quality check when it popped up. So then we that to make sure that we were following the process we put in place. So
Okay.
you don't want to make it difficult. You don't want to like make it super difficult to follow these processes because they're not going to happen.
Okay. I got a lot more about that and I want to get to it. But first, I want to go to commercial, and so we can always let the sponsors know we're thinking about them and we appreciate them. So when we come back, we're going to touch a little bit more on that one piece, Carol. Because again, like you said, you touched on like the quality checking of the trays, or if it was actually done correctly, we would catch some of those broken items and things like that. So I want to talk a little bit more about that, because that is one of those pieces where, I want to know what that quality, like when people have quality assurance programs or quality check programs, what are they actually quality checking? Is it just a double check of a tray, or are they checking parameters? Are they checking for indicators? Because I know I've heard it a lot of different ways. So I want to get a little bit into that, and we're going to talk about that right after this commercial. Hey, family, I know you saw that, right? RST automation. It is definitely cutting edge. It is definitely innovation. It is definitely an efficiency tool to help you get your quality up, because when you don't have to like put a lot of guesswork into it, with the use of the AI technology that they're using, it identifies instruments. It helps you with the efficiency on the table where you're not sorting through things. But definitely reach out to RST Automation and get your demo today so you can see how it may help you with the processes in your department. Same thing. We're talking about quality control. We're talking about training. We're talking about education. Incision.care. Please go on there and connect with them. Incision.care. Get a demo of their system as well, because again, we're trying to get you efficient. We're trying to get you quality, and we're trying to lead you toward innovation, right? Clarence, I agree. Quality sometimes can be a mindset, but the process as well has to be follow procedures. Again, do we have these procedures and processes in place? Do we have a quality process in place? Do we have that everybody's following and doing the same exact things? Because like I agree with Rebecca and I agree with you, it is a mindset. But if we do have those protocols in place where each process lends to each step and everybody's following the same exact thing, then, we can, and Rebecca says, Clarence agreed, quality can definitely be viewed as stepping stones. Each process we follow is a step toward achieving our goals. I agree. Both, I agree. This is a new week. So with that said, I see people in the chat. So with that said, hey, consistency is the key word for today. Consistency. So please type consistency in the chat so you can be entered into our drawing at the end of the show for your $25 gift card. So if you're here in the chat, consistency. Type consistency in the chat so we can definitely get you into our drawing. Hey, I know Carol's here. I don't see her, but she is here. We're having some technical things, but hey, guess what? We work through that and we keep going, right? So family, Carol is here. Let us make sure we keep going. Carol, are you back?
I can hear you and see you.
Okay. We can't see you on the screen, but we know that you're here, so we're going to keep the people going with the information. Okay. As it pertains to quality check programs, you heard everybody going back and forth. So like Rebecca says, it's a mindset. Definitely. Clarence says, yes, it can be a mindset, but we definitely still have to, follow the procedures. When people are putting these programs together as far as a quality check program, what are some basic steps you think should be included in that?
Again, like I said, you want to keep it fairly simple, because the more complex and difficult you make it, the more resistance you're going to get, for one. We did a couple different things. We had something called a coaching counseling form. So that could be used for good and not good, right?
Okay.
So if I was walking around with these forms in my pocket and I came up into Prep and Peck and saw you using the borescope and going to town inspecting everything and anything, I would be like, walk up to you with the form and say, you know what? I've been observing you for a few days and you're doing a really great job. And I'm going to put this form, I wanted to let you know that I made a note and it's going to go in your file. And
so we can use the form as a form of acknowledgement that processes are being followed. But at the same time, if somebody's not doing something, you have a form that can be used to document that as well.
Right. So it's a coaching counseling. It could be good or not good. And it's a good tool to have. You're recording these random conversations that you're having. So it's a note that's going in the file. So again, when you progress past that, so say I keep coming upon you and notice that you're not inspecting correctly and you're just throwing trays together and dumping them out and just making a mess. Well, I've noted it several times, then that will lead to other discussions. So,
Okay.
The process could be that simple. It doesn't have to be super formal, but if I know that I keep, making these forms out for you, we have a bigger problem than you just not following directions.
Okay. So on that note, since we are using consistency as our buzzword for the evening, how does implementation of standardized protocols improve the consistency of the safety of sterile process and practices? When we're talking about what we're implementing, how does the implementation of standardized protocols or procedures and processes improve the consistency and safety of sterile processing practices?
So I'll go back to I believe every technician should have that core set of skills,
Okay.
being able to work in decontam, being able to, properly put PPE on, properly, dilute chemicals, use the proper chemicals. A lot of the things come right out of the AAMI guidelines. And
okay,
a lot of times, my mantra is organization and consistency. And I really feel that the AAMI guidelines lays it out really well for us. So if we follow those guidelines, I was once told by a manager, as long as you're following the guidelines, rules, or they go with the tribal knowledge, again, from the people that have been there 25, 35 years and have done it wrong 25 or 35 years. So following simple guidelines, I think, is the best way to get that implemented correctly and consistently.
Okay. I want to go back to what you said. Clarence had a comment. He said he completely agrees with you, but know how the document of the information may make it hard for the next tech, making it hard to follow procedure and making challenging for the guidelines if we're documenting that this person did ABC, or even if they're doing it wrong. Does that make it hard on the next tech because of how you're documenting stuff?
Again, it depends what process you go with. If you're going to do a coaching counseling form, it's really like a note to file. I keep observing you
Okay.
in the same.
So it's not like punitive or anything. It's just an actual FYI. I noticed this day, or
Right. Let me
something of that
retrain
nature.
you.
Okay.
I'm going to note. I'm noting that we've had this conversation. The retraining has occurred, and if it continues, then you're going to have corrective action conversations. But if I talk to you once and you correct it after we trained you once, that it's done its job. So there's other quality systems where you can, if you have a staff of 20 people, say, and you keep literally a calendar, and every day the OR reports, gosh, Carol had bioburden in her tray today. It was the ABC tray. Okay, well, that's noted on that spreadsheet. Next week, Carol had bioburden in this ABC tray. And, you start to see a pattern with me. I'm having this problem. You're going to retrain me. And then if there's a process in place of how many times am I allowed to make these mistakes before I get written up? That's a more harsh program to put into place.
But when we're talking quality, should there be a number? Should you have a baseline of, like you said, if you're keeping a error calendar or the deficient calendar, you keeping record of all the times that the OR is calling you for ABC. Is there a threshold to say now it's time for corrective action? I know any error is a bad error, and we look at errors differently. And yes, you don't want that phone call from the OR, but is there and should there be a threshold for when you actually start doing the punitive, the punishments?
It depends on what the department wants to do or what the hospital policy is. I know that we went back and forth in my last system, where we wanted to make it a policy. Then we decided, no, we're going to let each individual hospital decide how many errors is too many errors. Is it 3? Is it 3 in a month? Is it 5 in a month? Is it
like here with like Sharon's question? How often is the demand for speed considered with these errors? Do we take any special considerations when people are making errors? Like if you're short staffed and you're trying to get these trays up in a timely fashion, how often is the demand for speed considered with people making errors? What do you consider errors, and how do you track, what those special circumstances may be?
So we had a list, we had a benchmarking list. So we had, say, 10 items that we were tracking. And that's what we used. So it was, missing indicators, bioburden in the tray, foreign objects in the tray. There was a list. So if you got hit with one of those items, it went on your calendar, as you said, and I think it was 3 errors a month would necessitate a write-up.
3 errors a month. So 3 errors a month would be the threshold for somebody actually getting written up for their quality.
But again, it depends on what the facility wants.
Okay. I saw a couple of things flashing by, but Rebecca says, how do we, I'm assuming she said, how do we get this type of heavy information out there to our new technicians without it being overwhelming? Sometimes I find it. So there's a lot of this information that they have to know, but it needs to be easily digestible for them. Like when we're talking, from where she's at, like, how do we get this type of information to the newer techs without it being overwhelming to them? I think I lost it for a second. But Rebecca, I would say that it has to be a part of your in services. It has to be a part of your processes for when you're training, and get your educators involved, because that's how you're going to change the narrative of what people are doing in their departments. It has to be a solid program in place where, again, everybody's following the same protocol. If we have it in writing, you give it to the techs and you let them know. That's the one thing that I would say. If you don't know that you're making errors, or you don't know that this is considered an error, or you don't know that you have 3 that you can make in a month, sometimes that information, when you go to call and have that difficult conversation, right? When you go to have that difficult conversation, you're always going to get the I didn't know. Nobody trained me. Nobody told me. But that's a part of that leadership, getting that information to people. And I think that's where we'll solve some of it, is that we definitely have to get the information to the hands of the people. We're going to go another commercial, and then we come back. We're going to dive right back in. I like where this is headed. Again, I think that it does come down to, as Carol was saying before she got interrupted, I think it's going to come down to what we're doing at the individual sites, but how can that play into a bigger picture if every hospital is doing something different? That is going to be one of the key questions. We're all training for a certain task. We're all doing our individual things at hospitals. But what happens when I leave this hospital and go to this hospital and they don't have that quality? They don't have that quality control program. Do I, you know what I'm saying? So I had to adjust to the different facilities that I actually go to. But do we take that training and try to get the next hospital to put something in place, be an advocate for it, right? But we'll talk about that right after this commercial.
SPD, unfortunately, is often a very underappreciated and underrepresented part of the perioperative team.
So what we understood is that not only is it super important for the sterile processing technician to understand what's happening in the OR and how what they do impacts patient safety, but also that the perioperative team understand what is happening in the sterile processing department.
If you've lived in either one of those places, you know how it feels when something goes wrong. The relationship between the OR and the SPD can sometimes be really difficult. With this program, we want to help build a bridge between the two departments. We're all working together towards the same goal of surgical patient safety, and we're so much stronger when we work together.
Did you see that? Incision.care. It is actually a program that's going to try to help you bridge the gap between what the OR is doing, what you're doing, and they're going to bring the two worlds together. We always talk about how can, SPD and the OR work together. How can we repair those relationships? We always talk about that, right? This is one of those programs that actually will give you tools and show you how they know what you're doing. You know what they're doing. I know that one of the things I implemented in my last facility is that they had to go to the OR and watch cases. It actually makes a lot more sense when you see where the instruments are being used and how they're being used, so that your part becomes more important and you can actually see those little things, right? So that's one of those. But Incision.care, if you're not subscribed to them, definitely go and look them up and actually request a demo of the new training program so you can see it for yourself. As I was talking to Carol about, how do we get that universal training? How do we get that? This is one of those things that can make that possible. It's an education program that's laid out in all these segments that actually, if everybody's doing the exact same thing, then it makes it easier for Carol to say, hey, that's not what I asked you to do, or that quality form that she's talking about actually goes into play. Because if you're not doing something that we know you were trained to do, now we can hold you accountable for it. So that's where that part comes in at. So on that note, Carol, right before we left, we were talking about the safety. And so I want to go back to something real quick. I want to ask you another question real quick. What are the potential consequences of cutting corners in sterile processing, and how can these risks be mitigated?
The consequences of cutting corners. Oh goodness. I
I
mean,
say we know it happens. You know that everybody's not doing everything 100% all the time. You know there's corners being cut.
yeah.
But what are some of the potential risks of that as it pertains to us doing our quality of patient safety and employee safety?
I mean, patient safety is, infection is number one. Not having a good outcome because the right instrument wasn't there or the instrument was broken. Just not good. It's just not good. And then it also causes friction between the OR and the sterile processing department, because then, something happens one time and then all of a sudden all you hear is, every time we get this tray, it's never correct. And there was something wrong with it one time 6 months ago, but things don't
Right.
let go of. So it causes friction. So that's not good for the patients either when the departments don't get along. So I mean, there's a lot of things it causes. And then
I can tell you from a quality standpoint, that is absolutely correct. Yeah, you can have that last error or that particular incident happened 6-7 months ago. All they know is that it happened again, and it's always, like I said, the end of the world when it happens, and it hasn't happened in a while. And again, repairing those type of relationships, because if you had a better relationship, would it be the same conversation? Would it be taken to that extreme if that relationship was repaired?
Right. I don't think it would have. I really don't think it. It would be a much nicer, calmer conversation because you'd be solid as a unit. And people don't realize that patients pick up on the tension and the tone and the not niceness. And I've been a patient many times, and when you feel that, you're scared. Like, you're already scared, and now you're thinking the people taking care of me don't get along, and what's going to happen to me when I'm unconscious? But that's another.
So all of that does play a big part in that. Yeah. I have a question for you. Knowledge and Nonsense wrote a question. Any tips for the human behavior component of quality? Ooh, can we get people to have shorter memories and less tension?
So that's kind of what we were just talking about, actually. And it's rough. It's rough to see when departments don't get along. I know when I first started my career in 2009, the OR and sterile processing were like this. It was horrible. It was absolutely horrible. So there were many days I cried. But then as I proved myself and as time progressed and made some changes and made some updates and learned, I didn't even have the AMI guidelines when I started. Like, I didn't even know what they were. So once I got my hands on it, started taking a course and implementing things started to change, all because we started following guidelines and got our staff to follow that, and we started being more cohesive and consistent.
Right.
And things, it made a huge difference. It really, we started producing better quality trays, which surgeries were then more on time and things weren't missing. And so it spiraled into a good thing.
To her point of human behavior, though, you said something about it earlier, like the seasoned techs may not want to do certain things. And, Rebecca alluded to when new people coming in, giving them certain information. But when you are dealing with the human component of quality and trying to keep everybody in the same, on the same path to having great quality so that we don't have adverse outcomes, two different groups. You have your seasoned, you have your new. But any tips for how to get those groups to mesh and, how to keep that quality at a certain level when you have, the ones who are willing to follow, the ones who don't know how to follow, and then the ones who just aren't going to follow?
So there's a couple schools of thought. So, and I've seen a few different things, a few different outcomes. So the newbies, if you will, really should be allowed a decent length of orientation. So let's say it's 90 days. Those first 90 days you get a pass, right? You should be precepted, you should be monitored more closely. Your mistakes should be caught because you're learning, right? It's not a mistake until it gets to the OR, but in those first 90 days, you should be, I'm not saying given a pass, but it should be more lenient on you. You shouldn't be, get a coaching counseling, or you shouldn't be getting these things, right? I mean, you can have the conversations, but it should be held against you until you're past your competencies and you are now out of the nest, if you will. And then, yes, you should be accountable for your actions, your mistakes, and so on. But how to get the meshing of the personalities and the meshing of the tribal knowledge that's incorrect with, okay, you're brand new, I taught you correctly. Susie Joe over here is telling you, no, that's not correct. We don't have to do any of that stuff. You gotta meet people
I don't want to interrupt your thought, but you said something I want to touch on real quick. So, and I know a lot of people probably disagree, but is it truly not an error until it hits the OR? If we did a quality check program, if we were doing quality checks in SPD, and I found it, and am I not to bring it to your attention because it didn't make it to the OR, or is it still considered, as a near miss because it didn't make it there? So how do you handle those? Because that goes back to employee safety. It goes back to still patient safety because we almost missed it. So
it depends how you have your process written up. So if I'm auditing assembled trays and I catch a broken instrument in the tray that I'm auditing, it never made it past my audit. That's the whole point of the audit. Could I do a coaching counseling form? Sure. Am I going to put that on the tracking sheet? No, personally. Okay. Because it didn't get sterilized. It didn't get passed on. So there's going to be a record of it, but it's not going to go against if we're using 3 for the month, it's not going to go against that total. That's what I would do personally. But,
so it wouldn't go into the actual countable, but you still have to address it.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. Yes.
Okay. I was like, no, it's an error regardless. I mean, I was a little bit more strict on that kind of stuff. So.
That's one of those old holdover expressions I probably shouldn't use. It slipped out. But again, I would do a coaching counseling form. So there's a note. We had a conversation on, January 16th. There was bioburden in your tray that I audited. It didn't go any further. However, it's still noted. And if I continue to see these notes in your file, it could lead to corrective action too. But again, it's up to each individual department how they want to do it.
And I wanted to go back to one piece as well, shortcuts and, the safety of the employees. I know that everything we talk about is at the end result is we want the patient to have an outstanding outcome. We talk about that all the time. But as it pertains to quality in SPD, and again, some of what Knowledge or Nonsense says, the human component. Talk to me about employee safety and quality. Like when you tend to take care of your own people, like whether that be, trying to eliminate the shortcuts or standards that you put in place, how does that affect employee safety?
I mean, PPE is a huge one. Your employer is required by OSHA to provide you with proper fitting PPE. How many times do you walk into decontam and see somebody unloading the bloodiest cart you've ever seen wearing only gloves, right? It's like, at some point, people have to take accountability for their own actions, and that would definitely be a reprimand of some sort. Coaching, counseling, what have you, whatever you have in place at your facility to deal with that, but it needs to be addressed. It's at some point, we can't be there 100% of the time to make sure that the employees are keeping themselves safe. So there has to be, the accountability has to be on them and on us as the employer. That's a hard place to be. And then, they want all these ergonomic desks and chairs and mats and all this other stuff. But it's like, but you're not even protecting yourself. Like it just.
And I'm probably gonna make I'm probably gonna make everybody mad because I'm not one of the TikTokers and social media gurus. I'm on LinkedIn, but I've seen stuff where people have phones and they're watching TV and all these things while they're in decon. And how is that distraction alone affecting employee safety if you're not even paying attention to what you're reaching in the sink for, or you don't see what's coming off of the dirty cart because you're too busy watching your episode of this or episode of that or on TikTok.
That I have encountered that, and I have put a stop to it immediately as I saw it. And then way back when I was still running a department, I had a technician who was watching TV while assembling trays, and I, stopped it. And, that was the march to HR. And I was still confused by that because I'm reprimanding you for doing something you should not be doing. And you're going because you're mad. I'm like, sometimes you're just not going to get through to some people. They don't understand that. First of all, in prep and pec, your phone should not be on your workstation because your phone harbors bacteria. Or if you had a dirty tray, or if you had a dirty tray that there's particles that you're now got on your phone, so it's going both ways. And then in decontam, why on earth would you want your phone anywhere where you're going to get overspray, or goodness knows what else is going to come down that you're going to drop it on the floor, or because droplets spray 12 feet or something ridiculous. I don't want to take any pieces of anything home with me, but.
And that's why I said I wanted to get into that part of it, because you're right. The bacteria and germs that come out of a decon or come off of a prep and pack station, and you're taking those home, but people aren't, they're not harboring on those facts when they're telling you the why not do something. People don't care about that. I just want to see my episode. I want to listen to my music. I want to do all these things. And I didn't want to leave to Clarence out here. He said there are seasoned people that will not say anything, but they would just expect you should know and have the knowledge of what to tell the proper information. So even your seasoned people should be advocates, but they just sit back and they don't say anything because, hey.
I'm not the supervisor. I'm not in charge. It's not my job.
So you do get those type of things. Well, but speaking to what you were saying is though, like when we're talking about trying to keep you safe, and we talk about wearing the PPE, like you just said, and you're having a phone out. So I always say that when I see these things and people send me stuff, and I'm like, how did they even record that video in decon? Like, how do you even have your phone in decon? Or you see the people at their workstations and the phones propped up and stuff like that. And that is one of those things that, as I saw Sharon have one. She said having a distraction in a detail-oriented field. like how are you paying attention to detail if you have all this other stuff going on around you? Like, how are you keeping your focus?
You're not.
But we got to focus on quality.
That's when mistakes happen.
When you're talking about focusing on quality, it's that part. You see what I'm saying? So, Sharon, I remember seeing a vendor in a VA in decon with nothing but a bonnet and gloves. He was close to the doctor and dismissive of our concerns. I've seen that one. People walk into decon and, it's just, I'm just in there with the gloves on. Like he said, just a bonnet on his head and gloves. But let me ask you this. How many of us, I'm not in a hospital now, but how many of my leaders are actually having them change their change their scrubs when they come out of decon? We can talk about all this, right? When the person's done in decon, are they changing scrubs? Do you have a dedicated pair of shoes? This is that quality metric that you're trying to keep you safe. You're trying to keep you safe, but do you have the little things that keep you,
Don't get me started on shoes, because these Crocs make me crazy. Why do we have shoes with holes in them with no backs? That is totally against the shoe guidelines. That just makes me crazy. And I tell this story. I had a guy, he was going through school, so he was volunteering to get his hours, and he kept bringing an open cup of coffee and decontam with him. And I kept yelling at him.
I've seen that.
I find it, I dump it out, and I would be like, do you understand everything that's aerolized in this room is floating into your coffee cup? like, stop bringing coffee in here.
Now-
It is against the rules. Stop it. And
But you know that if they're following the guidelines, that means the coffee cup is in that separated part where you get dressed at, not the actual decon, is what they say.
it was on the sink.
Shay said they are bugging, but not being funny at all. But yeah, those are the type of things when you're talking quality and we're talking putting stuff in place. Again, we all scream patient safety, but what are we doing for our own employees? How are you paying attention to detail if you're not paying attention? I like that one, Rebecca. I'm gonna have to get that one on your shirt, Rebecca. I like that one. But quality starts with you.
Yeah.
Quality starts in the department with you keeping yourself together, right? If quality starts with you, and we're saying, hey, we want a patient safety, patient outcome, but you're not even keeping yourself safe. Like, what are we doing really?
Well, and honestly too, I mean, even in my current role, I'm like, where's the shoe covers? Where's the bunny suit? Is all my hair tucked in? Is it okay if I go here? And sometimes you start heading to nope, not going to exam first, because then I'm gonna have to change. And where's the beard covers for this guy? Why does this guy not have a beard cover on? And and it's like I'm still that way. And even one time I had scrubs and I'd gone into DTM and they're like, oh, you can just come through this back door through prep. No, I cannot. I physically couldn't cross the threshold because I was like, if I do this, one, it's wrong, and two, people are watching me, and I won't do it. And you're like, well, it's just, you're just going 5 feet. I don't care. It's 5 feet. It's wrong, and I'm not.
But that goes back to is, and I'm not saying nobody's doing it, but is that one of those standards that people look the other way on because maybe you don't have enough scrubs, maybe they don't have a scrub machine. I don't want to give people excuses, but not changing your scrubs or going from a dirty to clean area, then back to a dirty area, then back to a clean area because you're short staffed and you're helping out in all these places. You don't have time to change scrubs. You don't have time to change in between me trying to run and get this tray ready for the doctor and me getting back to decon because something's on the elevator. So what do?
I mean, well, in the PPE, you should have the shoe covers, you should have the gown and the gloves and the mask and the, I feel on the scrub issue of changing out of decontam, if you wore all your PPE correctly, I think as long as you remove it and wash your hands, because that's what I did. And I've seen people who are just completely soaked, and I don't understand that either. But again, that never happened to me.
People sweat. They get hot, and when you're moving around, it does get warm if you got the gown and everything on.
Yeah, but I'm
Clarence says that
enzymatic.
Clarence said that all of this could cause a serious ripple effect, and you end up harming yourself, and lack of patient safety. Because again, if you're not taking care of yourself, and you're cutting corners and you're doing all these other things, what actually has to happen at the end result is that you're looking for may not be there at the end.
You see Rebecca's comment?
Rebecca just recently had to chase a vendor out of a sterile area who told me he was only going to be there for a minute. So what does it matter? You see, but I'm going right back out. Or like I said, running into a sterile area when you don't even have the right stuff on to be in that area, or you're not supposed to cross the red line anyway. I'm only going right there for 1 second. These are things that we deal with, and this is the quality that we're trying to get, under control to make sure that we are doing the right things all the time. I think that's the issue that we have to, get people to that point.
Well, and I wish that we had more empowered sterile processing technicians and managers to enforce these things. Like Rebecca saying she had to chase them out. I would have done the same thing. Vendors, some liked me, some didn't, because you weren't going to come into my department with your mask still on from the OR and your bloody gloves carrying a dirty tray through the hallways. That wasn't going to happen in my department. Get out. So, we need to empower our technicians and our managers in SPD, through their leadership and just through respecting their position, to maintain their department the way they're supposed to. Because when they get walked all over and they get beat down, sometimes you don't have that support, and it's hard to maintain these roles and rules. So
I think that's the important part of it is that a lot of what we said does come down to the leadership involvement. How much of it are we tracking? What do we have in place to kind of offset some of these issues that we may see? Is everybody an advocate for chasing that vendor out of there, or are they just letting them, you know what I'm saying? Or are we just letting them run back there as the whole department? Because it's your department. And I used to tell my staff this is y'all department. You know what I'm saying? So when you see something like that, like a rep being somewhere he's not supposed to be, or a vendor in an area he's not supposed to be in, say something. When you see people back in decon that don't have on PPE and stuff, say something. This is your department. So you can't let these things slide, because it then comes down to, you know, when these errors happen, you were a part of it too, because you let it happen at the end of the day. When you go home and you have that bacteria on your phone, you know, you did that to yourself. But when you're sick and all this stuff, that's where I think, you know, we need to be more of an advocate for the department, for ourselves. And, you know, everybody in the comments, I love all the comments that are coming through. I'm about to do the drawing any second. If you have anything for Carol, this is your chance to ask Carol anything you want to ask her. If you have a question, put it in there. Carol, while we're waiting on these last comments and getting ready for the drawing.
yes.
Any thoughts for somebody willing or looking to create a quality assurance program? What advice could you give them?
You know, don't make it too complicated, and start maybe with like the coaching counseling form, so that people get used to talking to people. You get used to approaching people and talking to people. Because that's the biggest thing. It's hard. It's hard when your peers and your coworkers to have these tough conversations. So if you start with the coaching counseling, maybe that'll be enough to correct the problems, depending on how severe the problems are. And, you know, move from there to more stringent, stricter processes if it's necessary.
Again, y'all heard what she said. If you're going to be starting a quality check program or a quality program, period, don't convolute it from the beginning. Make it a simple process to get everybody in the habit of actually having a process. And then as things happen, you can add more pieces to it. If you need to be a little bit more stringent in things, you can add those things later, but don't start from the beginning being at the highest level, because once you get, you know, you got to give them room to grow. You got to let them be used to those difficult conversations and, you know, understand where all of this is leading. I think that was one of Rebecca's comments, is with all of this information out there, how do we get it to the people just coming in? Starting a program that they learn to crawl and then walk and then start running will be the best way to do that, because you're not giving them too much at one time. Everybody, I gave you a chance to get those comments in. I saw people put it consistency in earlier. So do we want to get this drawing done, Carol? You want to see who we're giving $25 today?
Yes.
So the way it is, I'm back. Sorry about that. It got cut off in the middle, but hey, I wanted you to see that commercial. Incision.care. Again, Incision.care. If you saw the write-up there, 21 modules that cover all the big 6 areas that we focus on every day in sterile processing. So 21 modules. And again, once you incorporate something like that, that's an efficiency tool. That's a quality tracker that everybody would be doing the same exact thing, getting all of the same information, and it's progressively tracked. They get the scores. You can see how everybody's progressing. That is the way to go. That is the way that you would get everybody on the same page. As I was saying though, so for the drawing, the way this works is when you're here and we give you the buzzword, you type that in the chat, we put you in the drawing. Once you see your name come up, you come back the following week and say, I'm here. You are automatically then the official winner. You get your name pulled the following week when you come back and say, hey, it's me. I won last week. And then you get your card mailed to you. So it's a two-part process. You're here, you type in the buzzword, the drawing happens, and then the next week we see that you're here. You let us know in the chat that you're here, and you are officially our winner. Again, big shout out to RSC Automation, innovation at its finest, AIM systems. If you don't know about the AIM peel pack system and the AIM assembly station, definitely check them out. Incision.care, education for the OR and for sterile processing. Check both of those out if you don't know them. Without further ado, let us get us a winner for the day. Let's see who it's going to be. Shamu Anthony. Yay. Shamu Anthony is our winner for the day. Shamu, congratulations. I gave you the rules, so you know how you get your money next week. Definitely when I see you in the chat, we'll definitely get that out to you. Carol, I got another question here just before we go. It says, Carol, what are steps you can teach new techs to do when you have seniority, but look at the person just as in the facility? New employee, but they have no rank or status.
I'm not sure I understand. So what can you do as like a more seasoned employee, even though if you have no rank or status?
Yes, you're the new tech, and you have seniority, I guess, from the facility, but not in the department. You're new tech. What can you do? You don't have no rank or anything, and you're trying to, I guess, become an advocate or try to do things the right way, but you don't have a voice. Really, is what he's saying. Like, you're new. You don't have rank or anything as status wise go.
That's a tough spot to be in. If you're trying to do things correctly and you see more seasoned people doing it incorrectly, and you try and correct these people, depending on their personality, that might not end well for you. And that may be, I don't know if your department that you're speaking of has an educator. You have seniority but not position. If you can.
Oh, you have no seniority
And the position, but
trying. You have no seniority, but yeah.
So you
have the seniority in the department, but you don't have a position. I got it now.
Right. So, and that's a problem too. Like they want you to precept people, but they want you to precept new techs, but they don't call you a preceptor, or they want you to do these things, but don't give you the title or the support. So my dad used to call that being a supervisor. You're not a supervisor, you're just so because that makes it difficult on you, because they're not giving you the support you need to enforce what you're trying to enforce. If you think your leadership is willing to have a conversation about creating that position, or even having a conversation with the whole staff saying, hey, you know what, we don't have this official position, but Carol is going to be precepting the new employees because of her, experience and knowledge and blah, blah, blah. So it might be worth trying to have a conversation with your supervisor, manager, leadership, and maybe they would eventually see the value in, the preceptor or the educator position and maybe create it. I'm not sure what the hierarchy at your facility is. I mean, it's worth a shot. No.
Yeah, Clarence. So we call that leading. Like you're becoming a leader without having the title, and you're showing them that you may be ready for those type of positions. The downfall to what Carol was saying is that yes, it doesn't come with any authority. At the end of the day, you're doing it because you want to see the other techs and stuff, achieve and do great things, but it does not have any authority with it. You're doing it just to keep the department going and showing people. But yeah, to her point, have a talk with your leadership, because that is where we come in at to say, hey, we have this person that's always willing to step up. What can we do? Maybe that's create a position. Maybe that's give you some preceptor pay. Maybe that's something different that, but again, great questions. Family, it has been another great episode. Carol, I do appreciate you. I thank you for coming and, all the nuggets that you dropped and helping people create quality assurance programs. We look forward to that type of thing. Family, it's been another episode of Time to Talk with Carol Malone. Thank you. Yay! As we always do, it'll be another episode next week. Same time, same place. Definitely come check us out. Shamu, if you're still here, make sure you come back and say, hey, it's me. I won. Send me my money. And then, we'll make sure we get that to you. Family, thank you. And I'll see you again soon. Thank y'all. I appreciate you all. Carol, thank you for coming. I appreciate you. And I'll talk to y'all soon.